Welcome to Season 4, Episode 4 of the Gateway Geeks podcast. This time, Sarah, Chris, and Joe talk about Jupiter Ascending and its profound relevance to our collective happiness. We touch base on taking down statues of 13th century monarchs in a country founded 400 years later, watching bad movies on airplanes, stupid rich people on Twitter, Aeon Flux, and if every member of the cast of The Expendables has another movie in which they play a sheriff who, for some reason, issues standard police procedure. Now your hosts, Sarah, Chris, and Joe. Welcome, listeners, to this is episode 4 of season 4 of the Gateway Geeks podcast. This one's been a little bit delayed because the world is still on fire and we all have a lot of shit going on.
Yes.
That's Joe's very nice way of saying I was car shopping.
Dude,
You were car shopping and I work in a grocery store.
oh my God.
Like, it's the issue.
Dude, okay, so...
So, like, basically every time we try to schedule this, I'm like, I gotta work.
Oh my God. Well, I was reading something about how, like, all the frontline workers and, like, medical workers and stuff like that, just the effect that the constant, like, extra shifts, working all the time,
Yeah.
being in fear of catching a life-threatening illness for,
Yeah.
spending above minimum wage. I mean, I can see how that would wear on anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I go in for like 5.5 hours and stand in a plexiglass cage and and try to not get a life-threatening illness.
Oh my God.
I've been in there. It's like they built you all like that cage that Danny DeVito lived in Taxi.
That is pretty much it. Yeah.
See, I don't think
Yep.
actual taxi dispatchers had that. I think that was just so Danny DeVito could like stand on a milk crate during.
Yeah, I think that's exclusively for Danny DeVito.
Well, if you watch the pilot, it's actually entirely built around the gag that he is not physically revealed till the end of the episode.
Oh, right.
He's like this imposing, booming, like Wizard of Oz kind of figure.
Yeah.
And then at the very end, he comes toweling out. Ah!
Damn, dude. Oh, dude, speaking of
So
people-
should we actually like introduce ourselves so that like for audio so that people
yeah.
can associate our names and voices?
Sarah, you're such a professional. I don't know how you think of these things. So I'm Joe.
I'm Chris.
I'm Sarah Jane Connor. What's up?
Yep. Okay. So those are the voices you'll be hearing in this docudrama as it unfolds into your ears for the next. Yeah. So this time we're doing something a little bit different. We still have like our regular topics and stuff. We'll get into that, but we all watched a movie, and I don't like. It started off with the premise. It's kind of like the web series that Sarah and Chris did. It was amazing, and the abbreviation for it was OMG Titties We, which was amazing.
Yes.
But it's the premise
We're
is
very good at titling things.
Did you
The
do
thing
that
you
on
have to know
purpose,
about Chris
or-
and I is we honestly didn't. That's the craziest part. Like the acronym was an accident.
Incredible.
Like I was just trying to convey the idea of like that thing where you're like, oh my God, this is gross, try it. Like
Yeah, right.
and then like it just happened. Yeah.
Yeah. So the actual title we should say was, "Oh my God, this is terrible. You should watch it."
Yeah.
And so we all have picked a movie, and we'll like over the next few episodes we'll watch these movies. For this one, we chose Jupiter Ascending, which I gotta say, from my opinion, like just where it stands right now, I just watched it a couple hours ago. It's not actually terrible. Like I don't know if you can really say that.
No, that was the
honestly
premise of our show, is that it almost never
Yeah.
works.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Like we did stop doing it, like partly because it was eating away at our souls a little bit. Because honestly, like intentionally watching things that are bad will wear down at you eventually. Like also all the time we would watch something and be like, oh wait, this is actually good on accident. So 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 I had a lot of difficulty like making my short list, both for that and also because like most of the things that I like truly love, where I'm like, I adore this, I understand that it is not good, like, but I still love it anyway. Like, we did all of those on OMG Titties Week, so I didn't want to
to do it again.
Yeah, I didn't want to do it over again. Like,
Yeah.
because like we did all the Twilight movies, we did all the High School Musical movies. Like, what territory is there left to cover?
Right.
So I think the only like truly bad thing on my short list was Earth Girls Are Easy, which like I love, but I will not defend.
No, you.
Hey, remember when we watched that Hulu movie where Poe Dameron and Scarlet Witch tried to murder Jake?
Yes! Oh my God! They conspired to murder Draco Malfoy. Yes. Oh God! There was also the this one didn't even make it on the show. There was the time we watched the Judi Dench Ayn Rand biopic.
Oh yes.
Wait, isn't there another one with like some other amazing oh my God, her name Kate Blanchett and Margaret Thatcher? Isn't there a movie that she just did?
Oh, I don't know. There's the Meryl Streep Margaret Thatcher.
Oh, Meryl Streep.
The Iron Lady.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wait, let me see who it is. No, it's not Margaret Thatcher. It's who's the really terrible lady from St. Louis?
Oh, that's a series. That's Miss America.
Miss America. That's
yeah.
That's,
yeah, that is Kate.
Schlafly.
Yeah, that is Kate Blanchett. Yeah.
I have feelings about that are like not fun feelings, that are nuanced, and the whole thing about how like, in order to make her more relatable, they left in everything that she's shitty about with gender politics and left out that she was a segregationist.
Yeah. Right.
Oops. Because you could tell they're like, you could tell they were like, oh, that's another thing entirely. Let's not get into that. And I'm like, no, let's get into that. Let's make an entire documentary about the John Birch Society. How about that?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like the same argument we're having about statues right now. It's like, just because you create something that is about history, it doesn't mean that narrative has to like wash away all the nuance. And statues are such a terrible example of like a way to commemorate history, because first of all, so I'll preface this, as long as we're talking about this, let's just get it out of the way. So like yesterday, Tracy and some of my friends and I went to the St. Louis statue at the art museum, like the giant equestrian statue. There was a protest there. Actually, it was a counter protest, because there were a bunch of like weird, no joke Proud Boys and like MAGA idiots protesting because they wanted to keep that statue of Louis IX.
Wasn't it like 3 Proud Boys and a bunch of elderly Catholics is what it was? Okay,
well, no, it's weird though. It's because like when I used to volunteer at Planned Parenthood, they had like this group of seminarians, and it's like 3 old people, and then all of like the priests who went like straight from their mom's house to seminary.
Right.
So it's it's like no one with any life experience except like the 2 old people who have chosen to be horrible. I mean, it's not that I necessarily want to defend Catholics all the time as a former Catholic, but it's...
Let's cut out the bullshit and just say what they are. It's the slew clergy. Like, it's
No, it totally is. It totally is. Like, every one of them looks like Ichabod Crane, like standing there, and seriously, like standing there in 95 degree heat, and like their floor length, whatever, like, I don't know what that is, like dueling jacket, whatever it is.
I think it's a cassock. I don't know though. I'm the one person on this podcast who wasn't raised Catholic.
You should know, Sarah, Catholics know very little about Catholicism. That's
okay, fair enough.
You're the first generation that was allowed to read shit in English.
True. No, when was what was it called?
Vatican II?
Was that like the 70s?
Vatican II
like
was
77.
six. That was six. No, I think it was 64, something like that. It was mid 60s.
Yeah,
I only know because it was on Mad Men.
right. Well, and my dad went to a Catholic school.
Okay, 1962. Sarah's right.
Yeah, so he would have been like 10 or something when that happened. But
Yeah.
But anyway, so it's like the Catholics, the MAGA guys, and then a couple Proud Boys, all protesting to keep this statue of, what was it, Chris, 11th century king? It's Louis.
Louis the Ninth would have been.
Oh.
It was definitely pre-Renaissance.
Yeah.
The Crusades. I think it was like 11th or 12th century, if I remember right.
Mhm.
He died in 1270.
Okay, so 13th century.
Almost Roman.
But so, like, first of all, so you got that, and then you have like all these Black Lives Matter people who are just like, man, like, why are we fucking around with this statue? As long as we're taking down statues of genocidal maniacs, let's like take down this statue, put up something else. It's an art museum. And I'll tell you, as someone who knows not a lot, but like a little bit about how art museums work, the reason that statue is outside is because someone wanted to put that statue inside, and the people at the art museum were like, this statue kind of sucks, you can put it outside. Like, that's totally what happened. Because otherwise that statue would be like right inside as you go in the door.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but so the thing is, my point there is that's really a long way to make the point that statue being there does not teach anyone history. No one knew what fucking King Louis that was. Like, no one did.
No.
Like I remember when I started when I started undergrad, I was in an art history class and we had to like go to the art museum, and I'm like, 20 something. I'm like, hey, I don't even fucking know what King Louis that is. I had to like look it up. But these people protesting still didn't know while they were there. The Catholics probably knew, but only because he was canonized and stuff like that.
Yeah.
What was he canonized for?
For being a good, so like he was really well known for two things: feeding poor people and ripping the tongues out of heretics. Right. The combination of the two made him
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember reading somewhere years ago that one of his miracles, this is like the most half-ass like miracle you would give to a rich person like you've ever heard in your life. So he got real sick and he prayed and he got better, and that was one of his miracles.
He got better.
It's like such bullshit. It's like if I were a king and that happened to me and the Pope was like, that's a miracle, I'd be like, dude, don't fucking patronize me. Like, that's not a miracle.
So the Catholic saints all have to have 3 miracles attributed to them. And it's like, they're a lot like the X-Men in that there's a handful of them that are like, oh shit, that sounds awesome. And a lot of them that are like, oh, so you look like a frog.
You guys oh no, seriously, have I ever told the Wilgefortis story on this podcast? I can't remember if I have.
No, not on the podcast. I'm familiar.
I won't tell the whole thing, but essentially the story is there's this woman who was like the daughter of, so like she was from a pagan, as they said before, Vatican II kingdom, and her mother or something had converted to Christianity, and so had she, and she was supposed to marry this other pagan prince, and she didn't want to, so she prayed to Christian God to save her, and he made her grow a beard, so she didn't have to become pagan when she got married. Like, that sounds like I don't know, like some kind of weird puberty thing. I don't know if that has anything to do with.
I don't know. There's a lot to unpack there.
There really is. Yeah, or the more likely scenario, if that actually happened, she just like paid some surf dude. She's like, hey, you're me now. Here's some money. I'm gonna go to the forest. But yeah, so like you have, those statues are not teaching us history, but I will say a lot of us do learn history from movies, so maybe conversely it would be good if we actually put like some more realistic shit in there, and they weren't all just kind of like, a lot of them weren't just like fluff,
Look, I love statues. Statues don't tell you shit about the subject, but they tell you everything about what the people who put them up think is worthy of putting in stone.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I love, oh man, Florence, man. Let me tell you, do you know who has more statues than anyone in the city of Florence? No, this is a city that was the seat of the Catholic Church for a while, and it has this long history. It's literally ground zero for the Renaissance, and it's the fucking Borgias. There's just statues of them everywhere because they were the ones paying for them.
Yeah, like the closest we've come to literal vampires, basically.
Like 90% of like when you like Vampire the Masquerade is just basically like what if the Borgias actually ate children?
Yes. Yeah.
That's a niche reference for like, I don't know, no one. So
yeah.
all you art history majors who also are into LARPing out there.
Yeah. Have you guys seen the show? It's been on like Netflix for a long time. I've never seen it.
Oh, Borgias? No.
No.
Yeah, because
I
it's kind
haven't
of
seen
like,
it, yeah.
it's kind of like they're horrible, and I don't know if I want to watch an entire series. I mean, I'll tell you what, like watching the entirety of Mad Men kind of cured me of the need to watch an entire series about terrible people. Like, unless they're funny. I can do it if they're funny. But if they're just like, oh, look, he's murdering again, I don't know if I'll...
See,
I challenge your
I was
definition
good
of
with Mad Men, but like, yeah, some of them are just miserable.
Yeah.
See, I challenge your definition of who the main character of Mad Men was, because like Peggy became the one you gave a damn about very quickly.
But isn't that her story arc? Isn't that Peggy starts off as like a relatively good person and then becomes progressively more horrible as the show goes on?
She figures out what she needs to do. It's
no, right, but I don't know, man. I see what you're saying. I think she is. I think her and oh my god, why have I forgotten his name? I can't block the character's name.
Don Draper.
The ostensible main character.
Oh, Don Draper.
Don Draper, yeah.
So the thing is with Mad Men, you start with a character who has done and will do anything to get where he's at and keep what he's at, and a character who won't compromise at all.
Right.
And you end with a character who's figured out how much she's willing to compromise, and a dude who's been destroyed by compromising himself.
Yep.
True.
I mean, come on. Like, that show was worth writing out to the end, if for nothing else. Peggy with the cigarette walking out with the banker box. I mean, that scene alone.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. No, it was like a very well done, like in terms of writing, set design, all of that. It was totally worth it for that reason alone.
Like it also really showed like what those guys. I love how it allowed itself to roll towards the 70s and really showing. Towards the late 70s into like basically it showed how the guys like Don became the leisure suit wearing scumbags.
Yeah.
No, these aren't two separate groups of people. One led to the other.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, so, in an ideal world where there's justice, horrible people just become horrible and sad when they're old. That's what we're looking at in leisure suits. Oh my god, what's gonna happen? I just remember, so I remember sitting there yesterday and like fucking around on my phone at this protest and looking at the Proud Boys and just being like, what are these people gonna be like when they're like 60? Are they just gonna become the MAGA guys? Is that what's gonna happen? I
guess.
It's really weird. I mean, I feel like the whole Richard Spencer thing, as I understand it, is to try to make it like somehow more, try to make like segregation somehow more palatable by just like not calling it that. Like it seems like very shitty.
Pretty much.
Like kind of just branding. Like it doesn't sound.
No, like that's Richard Spencer's whole thing. Like he dresses nicely, and so you're like, well, let's listen to this man.
Yeah.
Even if like everything that he says is fucking horrible, like he presents it nicely.
Yeah.
So it's fine.
Even if he is like single-handedly trying to bring back the Hitler haircut, let's just hear him out.
Yeah.
Terrible.
I, for one, would like to hear what this dapper racist has to say.
It's,
I think the well-coiffed segregationist has some good points.
you know, he didn't show up in a white hood or a stained T-shirt, and everyone's like,
Yes.
"Oh, this is a different thing altogether."
Yeah, it's a very low bar, just like white supremacist, like,
Yeah.
you know, hygiene is a very low bar.
Yeah.
Oh, so I have to say the other like news thing. Did you guys see what the St. Louis mayor did the other day?
Fuck.
No. No, I didn't see.
She was doing a press conference from her office, and she was like reading grievances that people had lodged in petitions with the St. Louis police. And she would like read the grievance, and then she would read the person's name and their actual address.
Oh, what the fuck?
Yeah. And one of the people she did that to was like 14.
What the fuck? You can't just reveal the address of a minor. What the fuck?
She's terrible. And the thing is, like, I was talking to Tracy about this, and I was like, man, it feels like it's almost as though anyone who runs as a law and order candidate ends up becoming like some terrible Philip K. Dick villain. Like,
Here's
it just
the thing. When you watch the video, and this is not a defense, I don't think she knew what she was doing, and that's worse somehow.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh.
Well, I think what it is too is just kind of watching her, like when the city-county merger thing looked like it might have a chance for a while, and she kind of just like threw all her weight behind Steve Stenger, who eventually got driven out of office for corruption. She seems like someone who has like too much faith in the system. Like, and I don't fully understand exactly what went on with her, like in her personal life, but the way I understand it, her husband was murdered. And so like her thing is, it's kind of like she went way too far to the like, let's support police no matter what, instead of just like, let's give police what they need to solve murders, which I think people could agree with that, I guess, instead of just like the police. I mean, it seems like she doesn't have a lot of people around her telling her like, hey, maybe you should rethink this before you stand there and out a 14-year-old. And so now there's like a petition with, I think it seriously has like 300,000 signatures, which is the population of the city of St. Louis, on it for her to resign. And it took like 3 days to get that. So
not to overgeneralize, but can we just talk about how for the whole of the 90s and until his death, George Carlin was yelling at all liberals to quit trusting the government. He's like, what is your problem? Why are you doing this? Why are you trusting them? Didn't we teach you better?
Yeah.
God damn it. We bled so that you could, what are you doing? And you know what? He was fucking right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, hell, even like Dan fucking Harmon was just like, why do you young liberals trust the government? The government will fuck you over eventually.
Yep.
Like, nope. Turns out we just kind of didn't listen to our bomb-throwing elders.
Yeah.
And part of it is that, like, oh, God, this isn't the podcast to get into this. Okay.
Just go for it, Chris. That's what
Why do I always end up shitting on Bill Clinton on this podcast? Bill Clinton allowing the FBI to vilify the Green Movement and have a militant crackdown on quote-unquote eco-fascists pretty much destroyed the infrastructure that now has to be completely rebuilt, currently being headquartered from a burned-out neighborhood in Minneapolis.
Right.
So, you know, that's never mind. This isn't the place for that.
Well, no, I mean, I do remember, and speaking of like the way that history is reflected in pop culture, I remember during the Clinton presidency, there were a bunch of, well, I mean, even like all the Tom Clancy books that were put out during that time, like the villains were always like eco-terrorists. It was always like someone took over an oil platform or something, and then somehow that was dangerous to the rest of us, instead of just like, fine, just keep it. It's in the middle of the ocean. How is that? Anyway.
Jurassic Park 2 is the story of our heroes being trapped between an evil corporation and a fanatical eco-terrorist, both of whom are equally incompetent.
Yeah.
And also,
Yeah.
Vince fucking Vaughn played the eco-terrorist.
Oh, fuck, that's right.
You know, because, like, Ronald Reagan's corpse wasn't available.
Vince Vaughn, you know, of all the people, like, we were watching the Eric Andre stand-up special, and for those of you who aren't familiar with Eric Andre has very physical humor, and a lot of it, he's kind of like, he's kind of like a black naked Gallagher in a lot of ways. Like,
Okay.
he does a lot of, like, running up on people, like tearing his shirt off, a lot of like drug humor. I mean, it's funny, but it's also kind of fucking bananas. But we were just talking about how the fuck is he getting away with this? Like, he has this joke where he came out on his show that it's on Adult Swim at night. It's like a kind of a pretend David Letterman sort of thing. It's more just like a comedy show. It has like Hannibal Buress as like his Ed McMahon on it. And on one of them, he runs out just like ass naked, and he runs up to some random person in the crowd and like climbs up on their lap. And so he has this joke in his stand-up special about how he like his flaccid penis accidentally went in this dude's mouth when he did that.
Oh my God.
And I'm just like, how the fuck has no one told a story about this guy that got him like fucking kicked off of his show? I mean, if this guy has not, and I hate saying this, I hate this word because I feel like it's such a, I don't know, oversimplification. But if Eric Andre hasn't been canceled for doing that, like, you have to try pretty hard to get canceled, I feel like. But that's all to say, how his Vince Vaughn is okay, really? Like, that's really surprising to me. Just given the movies that he's in, I'm very surprised by that. I'm very surprised.
I don't know.
People just tend to like him for some reason. Like, you know, he's one of those guys that had like came out as a Republican because like that's a thing you have to do. It's like, because they're just as persecuted as any other minority in Hollywood.
Yeah.
It's exactly like coming out as gay. It's the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
So hard.
I don't know. Like, the fact that everyone involved with swingers continued to have careers sometimes just gives me a headache in general. But
the one guy that you guys were talking, oh my God, I can never remember his name. He's like the super butler in is it in Iron Man?
Oh, Jon Favreau?
Wasn't Jon Favreau in Swingers?
Jon Favreau directed Swingers.
Yeah.
Swingers. I mean, who the fuck knows? I don't know.
Look, I can't pretend that the fact that I don't love the Iron Man movies and that The Mandalorian isn't like one of the few things that brought me joy in the last year. So
yeah.
I can't totally shit on Jon Favreau. I just really hate Swingers.
I mean, the best Iron Man is the one that he didn't direct. But like,
which one didn't he direct? The third one?
3.
Like, 3 was Shane Black. And it's definitely the best of them.
Iron Man 3 is the best Iron Man. I will die on this hill.
Yeah, I agree. I can't watch the first Iron Man anymore. I've watched the second. It just feels too like prototypical at this point. It just
but look how pretty it is. That was when they were still shooting on film.
Oh, that is true.
It's so pretty.
Since we are we were technically talking about movies right now, maybe we should go back to Jupiter Ascending.
Yeah, weren't we talking about Jupiter Ascending?
I was going to say, Chris, you want to tell us about your background?
Just hanging out with my friends. What?
Yeah. So Jupiter Ascending, the way you guys, I don't know if you describe, you should give your your elevator pitch description for this movie that you gave to me, because I thought that was pretty good. I thought that sold me on it.
Oh, I know the one he's talking about. It's where I describe it as being the 99% of all science fiction and fantasy is just a large budget version of a 13-year-old boy's wish fulfillment fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
This is a 13-year-old girl's wish fulfillment fantasy.
Yes.
This is Labyrinth. This is why are there so few to pull from? I'm trying to think of something else to compare it to. But like, it's a story.
Because of misogyny, Chris.
Well, yeah, obviously. The Littlest Princess. Little Orphan Annie.
Oh yeah.
Like,
Mhm.
it's the story of an immigrant orphan girl who discovers that she is a magical space princess, and she gets a really cool companion dog / boyfriend.
Yep.
And she dresses up in some really nice dresses, and she's really smart, and she learns all the laws really quick, and she lawyers better than everyone and saves the world and gets to come back, and she gets to go back to her family, but she knows she's a princess, and she brought her hot dog boyfriend with her.
Who is also
Yes.
an angel, who also has giant angels.
He's a hot dog.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty good way to put it.
It's all yeah.
No, go ahead, Sarah. I'm sorry.
No, it's all of the types of man that you want. It's the hawk and the dog and the hot dude. That's it.
And the
I
Channing
guess I'm a lesbian. I don't know. What do straight women like? I don't know. Sometimes I'm concerned.
You're asking the absolute wrong people, Sarah.
They want Channing Tatum with wings. They just don't know it yet.
I mean, I will say, like, there, because of that, just bearing that description in mind, there are a lot of really interesting turns that this movie takes from like a scientific standpoint that would never happen in like Valerian, like we were talking about earlier, or something like that. It's directed by the Wachowskis, who are the people who directed The Matrix for you very young people. And I mean, so while we're on this, I would not have thought of the 13-year-old girl thing watching it. There were like maybe two parts. I mean, I guess like obviously when he gets shot or whatever, and then she just like pulls the maxi pad out of the glove compartment and like slaps it on him. I guess that's something that's really obvious. But the rest of it was pretty much like it fit. I mean, there was nothing that was like that felt, you know, so far outside of sci-fi that you're used to. It's just that it was put together in like an interesting way.
Well, okay.
Yes.
Let me tell you why your perspective is misogynist. Which I don't entirely mean that way. People have a tendency to look at this movie and think about the things that are the main part of the movie as the framing device. And they want to subconsciously make Channing Tatum the main character. Everything involving Channing Tatum where she is not on screen with him is filler.
Yeah.
It is there to...
Channing Tatum does not matter.
No, Channing Tatum,
I love Channing Tatum, but he does not matter in this movie.
No, he's just a speed skating sky dog boyfriend who occasionally...
Yes.
Yeah, so
he is there to be hot. Like, he is the sexy lamp of this movie.
Right.
Like, the Wachowskis love a big fight scene. Some of the stuff in here feels like studio notes, which whatever. I love every part of this movie. You could tell they wanted to have big, awesome space fight scenes while also not having to make her not an every woman.
Right.
And so the answer is you have sexy space dog who can go do the rah-rah battles, and then this movie is a series of... This movie is a parlor drama.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, there are definitely parts of it that felt like Dune, except, you know, more entertaining.
I love Dune. I will... Yeah, no, Jupiter Ascending just exposes the fact that the biggest problem with Dune is Paul.
Yeah.
Because Paul is an insufferable Mary Sue.
So speaking of that conversation, I don't think that Mia Kunis's character, I really liked how she doesn't really resort to violence much until the very end, where she's fighting the guy from that like Harry Potter spinoff. What the fuck is that?
Eddie Redmayne.
Eddie Redmayne.
Doing the absolute most.
Doing
Okay.
like the weird.
This movie came out the same year that he won the Oscar, I would like to point out.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
So, okay.
I hope Oscars just have like the year you won on them, and that's it.
Yeah.
Having now watched this movie 4 times, I think I've figured out Eddie Redmayne's thing. I think the voice is his way of grounding in his mind the fact that the character is supposed to be like 50,000 years old.
Yeah.
Right, like
I think so.
It's like some weird thing that maybe like a 50,000-year-old person would do that we can't understand.
Well, so when the movie begins, 2 of the siblings haven't de-aged recently, him and the sister.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's got like gray hair, and he's clearly like playing it old. And then after he de-ages, he just keeps using the same voice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a choice,
Yeah.
which I wouldn't change.
No, I mean,
No, everything about it is perfect. Yes.
I mean, he's definitely like a very detestable villain. I will say that.
Mm-hmm.
And he does. The only choice of his that I had a hard time getting behind was like his weird quiet. Suddenly I'm shouting, quiet.
Yes.
Like, I don't know what that was about exactly. But the thing that I really liked about, Mila Kunis is like not necessarily a Mary Sue, because so like throughout the whole movie, she's kind of, getting through on her wit, right? It's not like she's both an amazing fighter and like an amazing insta lawyer, whatever thing. But then at the end, she whoops his ass. She whoops that 50,000-year-old dude's ass with a pipe, which is amazing. Because I was like, man, she's gonna have to get fucking rescued. And
and that's where casting Eddie Redmayne is genius, because you're like, yes, Mila Kunis can totally kick Eddie Redmayne's ass.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, because there's like the couple of scenes where he reaches out and he tries to do like the Darth Vader choke to her or whatever, and then she just like knees him in the balls.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Yeah, like they're, the 2 of them aren't genetically engineered super soldiers. They're just like, it's just like a weird old rich dude and a house cleaner, just going at it.
So here's my question though: is Mila Kunis's character supposed to be descended somehow also from the dinosaurs?
No. They eliminated the dinosaurs.
Yeah.
Okay, so because there's a part where it's like being explained to her that the dinosaurs were the original inhabitants of Earth or something.
Well, the dinosaurs were there when the humans first came to Earth, and they were in the way, so they had to clear them out.
So all they're saying is, you, Mila Kunis, are the descendants of the
people
first
who killed the dinosaurs.
Okay, I got you. Okay, I must have just like stroked out for a minute there.
Yeah, and the man who was explaining it to her was half B. Why is this so complicated to you?
Sean Bean.
Sean Bean didn't die in this one though.
No,
I know.
Like, what is happening?
He lived through a movie. That's that Wachowski magic.
Yeah,
that's right.
He got to be a double crosser and survive.
I know.
Yeah.
Fun fact, that's only ever happened in one other movie. What is it? And what is the most inappropriate movie where all the main characters live? Aeon fucking Flux. Based on a TV show wherein everyone dies every episode, and that's the whole thing.
Yeah.
Chris, I obviously haven't seen Aeon Flux. What are you talking about?
So the thing about Aeon Flux too, Sarah, is I don't know for a fact if Aeon Flux, the comic or whatever, started in heavy metal, but it looks like it did.
No.
That would make sense.
The genesis of Aeon Flux is my favorite thing ever. It's made by the same guy who was the showrunner for the Rugrats.
Oh, what the fuck?
And he just had so much pent-up rage that he just pitched this idea for this ultraviolet animated series where everyone always dies, including the main character, and there's never an explanation for it. And it's just all disturbing imagery. But when you look at it side by side, it's there.
Oh, God.
Well, no, Aeon Flux, it was a comic.
Well, right, yeah. He was doing the comic, and then it got picked up by MTV.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. That makes sense.
So, yeah, Chucky Pickles and Aeon. Yep. Tommy Pickles.
Does anyone else have any notes on Jupiter Ascending? Because I feel like we're going off the rails here. let's
yeah.
It's one of my favorite movies ever.
Yeah.
Yes.
You all should totally watch it, and actually, it's a great movie to watch with people who are not always super into science fiction, because it's got a lot.
That's fair, yeah.
I highly recommend don't watch it alone and drink.
Yeah. I mean, you don't have to drink. It's not like, yeah.
No.
There was a comma there. Don't watch it alone, comma, and also drink. That was the sentence that Chris just
Yes.
This movie clearly wanted to set up a sequel that I want called Blade Girl and Hot Dog.
I mean,
where they fight crime.
I think it's clear that this movie was a trilogy that was compressed into a single movie.
Yeah. There's a lot happening in this.
That's the thing that I like about it, though, that it's just like so crammed full of stuff. Like, it's got the vibe of like a 90s movie that was adapted from like a French comic book that you never read. You're like, there's clearly a lot going on here that I don't know about, but like some things, yeah.
Right.
Like it's got a real like what's the movie? It's totally the clothing, I think, to this movie is Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai Across the Eighth Dimension.
Well,
yeah.
And like
I think that's it, yeah.
Yeah, and like very blatantly, one of its big inspirations is Terry Gilliam's most famous movie.
Brazil.
Yeah, and then they even put him in there. And the sequence lifted directly out of Brazil.
Oh yeah, the like half Brazil, half the Diagon Alley scenes from Harry Potter.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like the bureaucracy in this it's like Brazil mixed with Diagon Alley. It totally
is.
Right, and then that was Terry Gilliam is the one that gave her the tattoo.
Was it real? Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That totally makes sense. If you for those of you who don't know Terry Gilliam, if you remember
can we all forget him now?
He's there. If you remember,
where's my milkshake?
Monty Python and the Holy Grail, the bridge keeper in that movie. There's a character in Jupiter Ascending that is very much inspired by the bridge keeper, and that may just be how Terry Gilliam looks too. Like that's totally possible.
Yeah. Do we just very briefly talk about how? Or did we already talk about on the podcast how the Don Quixote movie finally came out and no one watched it and it disappeared?
Yeah, we did talk about that either last time or the time before.
Which, like, given what a complete dickwad he turned out to be,
yeah. And speaking, since we just said the name of Diagon Alley, we're gonna have to like briefly talk about the J.K. Rowling stuff. So
why?
Well, do we have to?
We don't really have. We should just like acknowledge it because Terry Gilliam said something stupid also on Twitter, and I just feel like this is just a theme that like everyone who says something like that has to go through some kind of like process if they ever want to like make things again. And we were talking about this.
No, if only that were true.
Yeah.
But like, shouldn't there be a process? Like, shouldn't it just, depending on what they say? Like, I'm not saying that, someone advocating like men's rights or something should be forgiven, or even Joe Rowling necessarily, who just basically she's continuing to double down on stupid turf stuff. Like,
yeah,
right. But this isn't new.
No, it's not. Right.
This has been known by people who bothered not to ignore it for years now.
Yeah.
Can we throw in the only good news that has come out of all this, which is the fact that we can actually talk about Glenner on Twitter now because he's not there name searching himself anymore? He got kicked off. He lost his wife. He lost his family. He lost everything for Twitter. And then they got rid of Graham Lyman finally.
Yeah.
Oh God.
Yeah, I just wonder what Disney's going to do, like, over time with, because, I mean, don't they have, what theme park is it at where they have, like, the whole Harry Potter thing?
No,
Oh, that's Universal.
yeah, Warner Brothers owns the Harry Potter rights. It's actually not Disney.
I
Shockingly, I know there's a single IP that Disney doesn't own, and it's the Harry Potter franchise.
Well, I love this story. That was supposed to be in Disney World.
It was, yeah.
Yes. And then JK...
Disney fucked up.
Did they? Because...
No, maybe not.
Yeah, because she demanded a percentage of the gate.
Oh.
She demanded a certain amount of the cash of every person that stepped in the door goes to her. And then Disney was like, get fucked. And then Universal is like, here. So they literally just took those are the plans. Like, those are almost identical to what was supposed to be at Disney World. And they built it over at Universal. But, like, oh my God, it's something crazy. Like, almost a quarter of every dollar that comes in the park goes right into her pocket. Like, like Disney never would have signed that contract. It would have been stupid. Yeah. And that contract is like into perpetuity or some crazy shit.
Yeah.
Or for like 20 years or something. So again, why is she on Twitter?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question.
At a certain level of fame, it's like, what are you doing here? Like,
like, why are you? Yeah, I mean,
why are you subjecting yourself to this? First of all, like.
Right. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but if I had like $1 million, you would never hear from me on social media ever again. I would not check my email. I wouldn't answer my phone.
If I'm having a good time on vacation, that's when I've completely disappeared from social media.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's usually when I'm like visiting family in Mississippi that I'm like live tweeting the experience. So if I were living on a yacht off the coast of can't be extradited to Sylvania, I'm not going to be tweeting shit.
Are we to assume that this is because like people like J.K. Rowling are actually just miserable and like bored? Is that what it is?
Aren't we all?
I think a certain level of narcissism involved, you know?
Yeah, right. Like everyone needs to hear what I have to say about this.
Yeah. But like, I don't know, because, like, if you're that wealthy and that famous, like, you don't need Twitter.
No.
Like, so, like, the only thing you could possibly be getting out of it is, like, the attention.
Right.
I also just dearly love her insistence on, like, constantly filling in unnecessary lore.
Yes.
Like, she did the exact opposite of George Lucas, where Lucas is like, I don't know, whatever. Let everybody just start writing books, and sure, yeah, that's all what it's supposed to be now. Then you got J.K. Rowling that's like, be sure you understand in your fiction going backwards in time that wizards just shit themselves and let it roll on the floor and did not have plumbing.
Yeah.
Honestly, I would love it if George Lucas actually filled in more details, because every time that he has filled in more details, it's been like bananas. And I'm like, please elaborate on this, George. Oh my God. Did you ever read that oral history of the Star Wars Christmas special?
Yes.
That they did in conjunction with the How Did This Get Made episode that they did on it? There was one part where one of the producers, I think it was, for that was like, yeah, we would just go to George Lucas and he would say random stuff to us like, Han Solo is married to a Wookiee, actually. And then he would just go off and we'd be like, okay. And then that's all the information that we receive in the entire oral history about the fact that originally the plan was for Han Solo to be married to a Wookiee.
It's like some kind of fucking bananas.
The greatest thing I've ever heard.
It's like some kind of bananas.
That should be canon.
Yeah, it's like a writing prompt in a creative writing class where it's like, there you go. Now go make an episode about that.
Yeah. No, the fact that that's not canon is wild. That's honestly, that makes everything about Han and Chewbacca's relationship make so much more sense.
Yeah, right.
What
Well,
if Chewie
because
was
that misses the possibility that the reason that Chewie hangs out with Han is because Han Solo is his idiot brother-in-law.
which makes it so much better.
That's the only thing that makes sense.
Yeah.
Brother, you're a great engineer. Please, my husband, he's such a fool. He's crashed his ship so often. Please help me.
Yeah. Well, and I almost wonder if so. Like a good example of a way that this can work out well is kind of like what happened with J.R.R. Tolkien and Christopher Tolkien, where his son actually filled in a lot of the lore based on his father's notes, but with like a level of detachment where he could objectively say, "That's stupid. I'm not including that." And then he would still, like, you can still buy, and I've been trying to find them, but they're super expensive and hard to get, where he just published like his father's notebooks. And they're intentionally hard to get because if you look in them, like people have scanned some pages and it's, I can't even remember any examples, but it's very like J.K. Rowling stuff where she's like, actually, wizard toothbrushes are alive, and when they die, they haunt the bathroom. It's shit like that. It's like, who the fuck cares? Why did you write this? But it can be done well. You have to
time to write a middle grade novel about ghost toothbrushes. I'm gonna make $1 million.
The flip side of that being when Frank Herbert's son tried to write another Dune book, and it was unreadably terrible.
Yeah. Like you still have to have some talent and expertise. Like Christopher Tolkien is he has his doctorate and he's like a professor of Tolkien studies. So I mean, at least he's like dedicated some intellectual room to that instead of just like, pulling things out of his ass and like sending them straight to the publisher. So, yeah. We should just make like a rule on this podcast where if someone says something stupid, we just like talk about it very briefly, if at all. I think we should. I
think so. Yeah.
Because like I was watching this YouTube thing where it was just like some stupid YouTube drama thing, and then some guy who was like not even connected to the group that was creating the drama commented on it, and then like everyone hates him now. It's like some stupid high school politics thing. Yeah, and it's just like no one cares. Ultimately, people are just super bored right now, and they're gonna watch anything that's like any garbage.
Oh God, yeah.
So.
Yeah, but like it's. I think we just need to remind everyone that Rowling is a TERF who hates like look. God, do we have to get into so? There's like this boomer / older Gen X cult, and it's especially prevalent in England, and it's especially prevalent amongst like a more moneyed class, and they call themselves gender critical.
Yeah.
And it's people who think that they're being intellectual. This is the Lacey Green level of like, hey everybody, I'm all sex positive and everything is great, and remember there's only 2 genders, bye. Right.
And it's like a very simple thing to shoot down, because it's like you cannot have an objective discussion with someone about their identity. Like I can't say to Chris, like Chris can't be like, hey, I'm male, and I can't be like, Chris, you're not male, and here are things I've dug up from your past that suggest that maybe you're not, because it doesn't matter what my opinion is about whether or not Chris is male.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't fucking matter. It's really that, I feel like it's really that simple.
I think it's still online. Go look for Parker Malloy interviewed Graham Lynham forever ago and asked him to describe a chair in as few words as possible. And it turned into such a clusterfuck of addendums and and like it became very clear that it's very difficult to use very direct and absolute language to describe the use, function, and form of a chair.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was the most brilliant piece of like, yeah, fuck you, life is complicated questions you've ever seen.
Yeah, and that's an inanimate object designed for a specific purpose. And when you're talking about people.
Yeah. Now I want her to ask the same question of Clint Eastwood.
Just bring Clint Eastwood back for a part 2. That was so fucking weird.
There's the 44th president of the United States of America.
What? Yeah, is that what that was about? I can't even remember. That was during the Obama presidency.
It was during the Republican National Convention.
That's right.
When he got on stage and he started having a straw man argument with an empty chair that he was pretending had Obama sitting in it. And even the people in the audience are like, oh, Clint's sundowning. Oh, no.
Clint literally spit, like he basically cooked his brain making spaghetti westerns, and this is what happened when he's in his 80s.
Like, he's still a good director. He's just like, he's insane, and I think it just works with a lot of very talented people who oh fuck, what's that one he just made about the Olympic Park bombing, where it's basically just all about how the media is bad. And but he goes out of his way to insinuate that the reporter who gave the wrong name got it from an FBI agent that she was sleeping with. These are real people. That didn't happen. He just made that up entirely because, like all conservatives, he thinks the media is out to get him. And he also manages to slightly gloss past the fact that when they did find the actual bomber, it was a pro-life terrorist.
Yep. Yeah, that makes me think. That makes me think of this guy at the protest yesterday who was wearing a shirt that said, "I survived Corona hoax 2020." And
I mean, year's not over, bud.
That's what I said to him. I almost got punched in the face. I was like, maybe speaking too soon there, dude.
Your chair's still broken?
Yeah. I need to fix it. It's just doomed now. So I put in here, Tracy and I were watching this. It's based on the Michael Connelly novels. And I forget what the novels themselves are called, but the main character is this LA detective named Hieronymus Bosch. Like, that's actually his name. It's really funny.
Oh, yeah.
It's really funny.
The show's just called Bosch, yeah.
Yeah, the show's just called Bosch. But it's...
I feel like my mom loves those novels.
Probably. Yeah.
It's a thing that moms like, you know?
It totally is. The thing I will say about it that's kind of interesting is it's not true crime, but it's like crime fiction written like they're mystery novels. So like when you're watching a season, there are a lot of like red herrings thrown in there. Like there'll be like in the first season or in the second or third season, there was this guy who was like writing. He was like would like walk up to someone, right up to someone on a bicycle and shoot them and then ride away. And they made it seem like that was going to dovetail into the main plot. And it just like had nothing to do with the plot. It was just like a crime that was happening.
Okay.
So there are so anyway, the whole point of this, we're watching this show and it depicts cops in like a very specific light. And it's very much like cops are heroes, cops are badasses. They can only do their job when they're like breaking the rules and not doing their job correctly. It's kind of like when we were talking about Birds of Prey, where Rosie Perez, like, she can't get anything done until she takes her badge off, until like she turns her badge in, and then she can get things done. And it's kind of like that. But the interesting thing about Bosch, as opposed to, you know, any other kind of cop show, is that he's actually like a stickler for the rules who just gets fucked over by the system, which is like the biggest cop fantasy that literally never happens. But so my question is this, like, how do these depictions of the way that we see cops in popular fiction, like how does that affect, you know, like the way we treat cops in the real world? I mean, just, you know, thinking, I don't know if you guys have like examples of, I don't know, cops from fiction that you can think of that are particularly compelling to you for some reason.
Look, okay, here's the thing. All of these shows, every police procedural you can think of, comes from the English tradition of detective novels, right? You start with Poe's Murder in the Rue Morgue, you get to Sherlock Holmes, and then you get Agatha Christie, who just churns out detectives like it's no one's business. What do all of them have in common?
Besides
None of them are cops.
Yeah.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
Now, this is specifically because no one respected cops. Cops had such a shitty reputation that everyone was like, what if an actual smart person decided to investigate crime?
There's this
God. Like, if you look at contemporary accounts from, like, when the Jack the Ripper murders were going on, like, oh my God, Scotland Yard was constantly getting torn a new one because they botched it so bad. Like, public confidence was so low in the police. Like, which is fair. 6 fucking women got murdered, right? And no one was ever able to figure out who did it. Like,
right. And to your point, Chris, there's we got Tracy has BritBox, which is like, if you don't know, it's like Netflix for the BBC.
Right.
They have like all these. Midsummer Murders is a very popular one, but there's like 5 different. Is Hercule Poirot a cop, or is he just like, okay? So he's not.
No, he's just a strange Belgian man.
That's right.
I think Poirot is a private detective.
Oh, right. Okay. Gotcha.
And in fact, it's flat out like by the time the novel, by the time, and private detectives were a thing because rich people would hire smart people to solve crimes for them, and that was a real thing.
Yeah.
Like, and a real thing until not that long, like the Pinkertons in the U.S. or like rich people would just hire their own cops.
Yeah.
That were smarter than the bad cops, and then. Poirot's whole thing is that he is retired. Oh. And because he's retired, he's just bored. And rather than being paid to solve crimes, he just solves interesting crimes.
He has his pick of the litter.
Yes.
Yeah. And
he's in it for the love of the game. Yeah.
Right.
There's a monologue from the beginning of Murder on the Orient Express where he's just like, I'm rich as shit. Like, one of the guys on the train is the guy who ends up getting killed tries to hire him. Because he's like, I think someone's trying to kill me. And he's like, yeah, you seem like an asshole, and that's not a very interesting case. I'm already rich as shit. I don't need your money.
Yeah. And you know, there's an interest. I was reading about like the history of the Pinkertons and just like what they became in the Old West and everything.
Strike busters.
Yeah, they became hired goons. And there's actually, and Chris, you probably know what this is, and I can't remember what it's called, but there's actually like a law that's still on the books, and it's something, it has like the word Pinkerton in it somewhere, where it's about like extra military or extra legal like police forces. Like it strictly prohibits like there being a Blackwater for police as opposed to
there are specific state laws. Like the Pinkertons still exist.
Do they really?
Yeah, like I think they're under a different name now, but like a lot of it comes down to what was it called? The Pinkertons fought a war in West Virginia.
Yeah, against the coal miners.
Yeah, and lost.
Yeah.
And lost so bad that the National Guard had to come in and restore order because the miners tried to start like the first like communist microstate within the United States, and they got this close to doing it because the Pinkertons tried to mount an amphibious landing inside of a labor camp, and it turns out that amphibious landings are hard.
It's almost like the best way to deal with like, you know, civic unrest is not to have like a militarized force try to take them down. It's almost like we could have learned that.
Well, again, though, that story ends with the National Guard rolling in and crushing everything. So
it's not a perfect example, is what you're saying. Yeah. So the one example I could think of is Serpico. And Chris, are you someone else who likes that movie? I assume you would be, because I do.
Yes, I'm a dad.
That movie, I saw that movie first with my dad, like maybe 10 years ago. Like, I didn't see it till I was like in my
Everybody saw it with their dad. It's a dad movie.
but it's a very Al Pacino, like 70s Al Pacino movie in a lot of ways. But it is actually based on a true story.
Yes.
Where the premise is just there was this cop who saw these other New York cops taking bribes, and he said, I don't want to do that. And then they put him on, what was it, like what do they call it? Like the unit that deals with drug crimes.
Narcotics.
The narcotics unit.
Mhm.
Yeah, and then some cop like didn't back him up and he got shot, and then he like testified. But there really aren't that many stories like that. Like if you try to think of another one.
Okay, I can tell you the weirdest one.
Yeah.
It's called Copland with Sylvester Stallone playing a I think he's supposed to be mildly developmentally disabled.
That's just Sylvester Stallone, Chris. Come on.
No. Watch it's
he's doing his best.
he plays this like dim-witted like local sheriff, and it's loosely based on this real thing where like New York City doesn't have a residency requirement. And so there became this one town in the suburbs where all of the NYPD officers lived. And so like everyone in the whole town is a cop, but then but then they have their own police department.
Mm-hmm.
And it was basically about this local cop who crosses the NYPD officers that make up the people who live in his town.
Oh, interesting.
No, it's not.
It's not.
It's a concept, but it's a Sylvester Stallone movie. Let's also remember, Rambo. Rambo was literally just the story about a drifter beating up cops.
That's true.
Like,
isn't
he
there
only actually kills one of them, right? Like, he knocks the helicopter out of the sky. It wasn't entirely his fault.
Yeah, but isn't there also... So I know there's also like a Arnold Schwarzenegger movie where he plays the sheriff. I wonder if all the guys from the Expendables have movies where they play sheriffs.
Probably. Honestly, yeah. Curate that film festival, all of the movies in which the actors in the Expendables play sheriffs.
But then you'd have to deal with the people who would choose to pay money to come to that festival.
Yes.
That should just be like a giant cannon that we just fire people into the sun.
Did anybody else bother to watch Home Alone 3? Or I guess 4, there was a 3. Home Alone 4, a.k.a. the last Rambo movie.
What?
There's a Rambo movie that came out like 2 years ago, Joe.
Oh, no, I saw... Yeah, no.
Yeah, we talked about this the last time we all hung out in person.
Okay, yeah.
Remember? Because this was the time... That was the movie where Joe was like, you two have seen this, right? Because Joe assumes that we've seen every single bad movie.
I must have seen it since then because I did watch it. Oh, I watched it on a plane. That is a great plane movie.
It is, and that's also the weird thing about that movie is you can see like the last functioning brain cell in Sylvester Stallone's head being like, you know, like wanting to be in a film that is somehow like socially, I don't know, not progressive, but like useful in some way, because the whole underlying plot of it is like it's not his stepdaughter, it's like his weird, I don't know, pretend niece or something gets like sucked into like human trafficking, and he tries to go and save her, but then he fails and he gets everyone killed, and then it's Home Alone because then he's hiding out on his ranch. Yeah, that's a weird fucking movie.
Let's just say, like, I like, it's kind of sad that I'm like not like everyone else. I'm just staying home and not traveling this year. And airplanes are how I really catch up on a lot of my D-grade cinema.
It's a good time to do that.
Like, it's like I never want to watch good movies on an airplane because I hate flying. Like, there's a very specific kind of movie, like the Clash of the Titans remake from like 10 years ago. That's a good airplane movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I will say that like there are a couple collections going on. Like Amazon has done a really good job of collecting super shitty horror movies that Tracy and I have been watching.
Not my bag.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of like.
No, me neither.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess what we're kind of the subtext of this conversation is it would be nice if we could talk about things other than cops. So maybe that's what we'll just do.
Yeah.
Like it's an inherently dramatic setting. Like you understand why people were attracted to telling stories about it. But again, we just forgot that the subtext of all detective fiction was supposed to be that cops suck.
It's a good point.
Like, hey, cops are great and they can solve crimes and they can do all this other stuff. And oh, there's always good people fighting for. I'm constantly reminded of there's an Onion headline from exactly about 4 years ago that said. A message from the highly competent people working behind the scenes to keep everything working. We don't exist.
That's a great place to Chris, you're good for the outros. I will say that. Our outros between you and Sarah, I've got like the byline and the outro every time, no problem.
The human mic drop.
That's it for season 4, episode 4, the Gateway Geeks podcast, the human mic drop. We are your hosts, Chris Knetzer, Sarah Jane Connor, and Joe Colburn. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next time.